Welcome in to the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. We got Big E, we got Rudo back after a few days off. We're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff. E, I know you guys talked about the conference finals the other day a little bit, but I have some things I want to talk about that go on with them. So we'll get into that. First, we can get into Avalanche conversations, though. And there are two players for the Colorado Avalanche that are still doing stuff, that being Nathan MacKinnon and Martin Necas, that are playing at the World Championships right now, playing on two very successful teams as Canada, obviously, no big shocker there that they're doing well, but when you look at the standings of the other group, you also have the Czechia doing very, very well for themselves. So Marty Necas and that team playing strong in Group B. They are tied with the USA for second and third in that group. So they'll be going on to the quarters as well as Canada. And look, obviously, when we talk about Worlds E, the quality of competition is varied, to say the least. But you've seen Nathan MacKinnon dominate this tournament. I don't know that you should take a ton from that, but I do think it's a good reminder of, while the Avs did come up short in the playoffs, Nathan MacKinnon is still really, really, really good.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why we say, God, I'm going back. Remember, like 1.0, 96 to 01. You know, it's 4 years of disappointment. And then the fifth year of climbing the summit again. Now, with the MacKinnon era, you're going to 22 to this is the third year of disappointment. You know what I mean? So hoping to, beat the 1.0 era with climbing the summit next year. But when you have the best players in the world, that allows you to do that. And that's what Cale is. That's what MacKinnon is. Kind of crazy that you're seeing those types of players there this year with Crosby and all that kind of stuff, and we can get into that. But I'm saying it's pretty cool to see that, as you know, I'm not a fan of that tournament, but I think, we'll get into it if you want, but, it's got a little bit of a different meaning now with the Olympic next year. You know what I mean? Like, I think that's kind of what's bringing out the best, and that's why. So, but yeah, when MacKinnon is on top of his game, then you have a chance to win.
Yeah, I don't disagree with your concept of the tournament is maybe a little bit more keyed up than it usually is because of the Olympics coming next year. But I think that is maybe a little bit of a feather in MacKinnon's cap. Now, obviously, there are key players for these big teams still in the NHL playoffs, so it's not the full cavalcade of Olympic international teams. But MacKinnon is the leading scorer for Team Canada in this tournament and top three in the tournament. Again, does he have some easy goals against teams like Slovakia? Sure. But still, when you talk about a player like this, I think there has been a conversation around Nathan MacKinnon that has kind of formed where he is, obviously everyone knows he's one of the best players in the world, but you talk about the Avs failures in game sevens. And if you look at the Avs history of game sevens with this core, before this most recent one, game sevens had not been Nathan MacKinnon's best. He had not been the best player in those games by any stretch. This last one, he was really, really good. They didn't win it. He still produced in game seven. He produced through the whole series. And you count on top of that, he's also playing for Team Canada in the World Cup where they win a winner-take-all final game against US. He's a guy who's starting to get that reputation, at least internationally, as maybe a bigger game player than some people initially thought.
Yeah, and you're right. As a group, you can see that Game 7s have not been there, right? I mean, it's a fact. It's just a fact. It's just, and it's just not Nathan. It's the group, right? It's Mac. It's Kale. It's Gabe. It's Taze. Now you're adding Natushkin. Right. So it's as a group, they just haven't been there. I think as an individual, I think he's at the top of the world. And I do believe Kale's at the top of the world on the back end. He's at the top of the world for me on the forward side. And I know there's McDavid. I know there's all those guys. But with that said, you're right. It kind of gets to annoy you probably a little bit because I know as a player, they do look at it and it's like, how come I'm not more success in Game 7s? You know what I mean? It does start to bug you. It has to bug him. Has to. You know what I mean? Like, he's a professional. It has to bug him. I do believe that I had a theory, like, and that's why I get so mad all year long when the Avs fall behind, and they always prove me wrong because they come back in the game, and I'm like, oh, God, because I'm a first goal guy. You know that. First goal. My theory is wrong because I'm always like, during the regular season, it maybe not matter. But in the playoffs, it does. And then, maybe I do believe in Game 7. I think it's 75% or 80%. If you score first goal, you win the game. But then my theory goes out the window. The Avs are winning 2-0 with 10 minutes to go in the game, and they lose Game 7, right? You know what I mean? So my theory is just shot. You know what I mean? So it's like it doesn't make sense. So I don't know. Is it pure hazard? Is it pure luck? Is it bad luck? It could be. You know what I mean? Because McKinnon's a driven guy. And you can tell he wanted to be driven this year because then he goes to Worlds, where he didn't have to go, right? Kale didn't go. We're talking maybe about, it all depends on injuries and things like that. I get that. But you have some juice left in the tank. That means you're ready to go. You want to keep playing. You want it to keep playing. So we'll tip our cap for him for showing up. Again, it's not that hard when a guy like Crosby, that's the face of the league, shows up and it's like, all right, maybe I will go too then. You know what I mean? It makes it more fun, makes it better. But it's, you know what I mean? But it's, then you look like God, I don't want to use the word, but Connor Bedard, unless he was injured, you know what I mean? It's a bad look on you for saying I'm not going. And I do believe over the years, you've always had the Canadians who was always pulling teeth. They got to try to get them there. But I do believe when you're young, you don't think Celebrini right now is like licking his chops and, you know what I mean, like being with Nate and being with Crosby, and it's pretty amazing. You know what I mean? So, again, I'm not going to bash Bedard. I don't know if he said he was injured or not, but, I mean, man.
Look, I'll take the other side of this argument, because I think I actually agree with it. And I know you're going to agree with what I'm about to say. Yeah. But obviously it's more nuanced than this. But especially in the modern world of sports, you have to find time to take days off. Sometimes the best thing to do is to get away from the rink, right? And so you have to pick a time to do that because, yes, Bedard didn't go to this tournament. You're going to see him in the beauty league or whatever league he plays in the summer. Yeah. Like, it's not like he's going to be off the ice for 3 months. He's just not playing at this tournament. So,
but just to add to what I was saying too, it's funny because when I was playing and you got to remember the Olympics didn't start till '98 in Nagano. Right. So that was the first year. Before that, like World Championships, if you ask a guy like Forsberg, that was the biggest thing in the world. I can tell you that. Like, I remember having those conversations with him, and because I remember when we were losing, not that Canada was going to call me, but all the Canadians on the team are like, they're all high. Actually, 1 year in LA, I got the call and they said, stand by. And I never got the call. So whatever. No big deal. But the guys always hide and they're like, oh God, I don't want to go to Worlds. Like, it was that thing. Like, you don't want to go. But as Euros, they were living for it. And some guys would get so mad because they were like, they care more for that than to win the, Stanley Cup. And that was the thing back then, you know what I mean? And North American players would get mad at Euros for caring more to win the World Championships. I'm not saying they would care more, but it sure looked like that because it's so patriotic. But now you got the Olympics, and again, we've gotten away from that for pretty good 10 years, whatever it is, 8 years, 9 years.
Sure.
Too long. So the guys like McKinnon's that never touched it, only the Four Nations and that weird tournament that, the team, whatever it was, Young Guns, whatever it was. So you can tell he's eager. Yeah. So those guys are eager to get back to it. You know what I mean? Like for real. You know what I mean? When I say it was for real before, but you know what I mean? Like for an Olympic gold medal. So I think it was important for Crosby to go, and I think it set the tone. Next thing you know, the Fleuries of the world, that freaking guy's retired, and he's like, I'm going. You know what I mean? And that's kind of upside down of my years where nobody wanted to go. And I can tell you working with the Avs too, like we were always like, oh God, he's not going to want to go. We have Rudo, can we talk to you? Like Team Canada wants you. And then guys would be like, oh God. You know what I mean? And it's like, and again, it's an honor to represent your country. I'm downplaying it, but it's a little different for Euros. They usually go. Canadians, US, it's like, But now, it looks like this tournament, they got a few more guys, so which is nice. Well, it brings the competition up.
Let me change the angle on it because McKinnon went. He's playing great. There's not a whole lot more to say about it than McKinnon's still really good. And, cool. The Canada looks scary for the Olympics. On the other side, Marty Necas. Now, I don't think Marty has played bad. He's a point-per-game player in this tournament. I think he had a goal or an assist today. I forget. Playing fine. But one of the things you like to say about these types of things, you can only hurt yourself at tournaments like this. You're not going to gain a whole lot, at least in the eyes of the media and things like that. And we're watching the top of that Czechia team, guys like Pastrnak, absolutely light the tournament on fire, next to a Necas who is playing well, but not going crazy. Are we learning anything about Necas at this tournament, or is this just some numbers on a sheet?
Yeah, maybe numbers on a sheet. I want Marty to be at his best on like this round right now or last round, right? Am I glad that he's playing over there, getting more experience? Sure. You know what I mean? Like I said, I've changed my stance a little bit over the years, but you know what I mean. I think Marty's a good player. I think this tournament has got a little bit of different style, but there's some intensity to it, a little bit that I watched. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I watched every shift. I'd be lying to you. You know what I mean? But did I watch highlights? Did I watch a period here, period there? Yes. Sounds like the pace is pretty good, especially I was watching today. The pace is pretty good. I just wish Marty, he wasn't bad in the play. I think he was okay, right? I think he was okay. We can't be too judgmental and say he was bad in our playoffs. I think
it's fair to say you wanted more.
That's my point. I think he was okay, and I think you need more, right? You know what I mean? You want to have a championship team. You talk about the ceiling and the floor all the time. I think Marty was more in the middle. You know what I mean? It would have been nice to see him at his ceiling. You know what I mean? Where it's like that's what we expect from him. I think this is where he left a little bit on the table, maybe a little bit of regrets. Again, he's not the only one. I'm not blaming everything on him. But, it's Marty's got some maturity in his game, like to get to, in those crucial times. Those games maybe give him that chance a little bit to put his game on the line and see what he can do. You're still representing your country. You're still representing, the World Championship. So again, it's more than just like you said, the beer league game or the whatever you want to call that, the league that they play to in in the summer in Minnesota. But
there's like another new one now too.
Yeah, there's
Three Ice is still out there. I don't know.
I don't know. So we'll see. He wasn't that bad.
The reason I bring this up, and I don't know that this is necessarily true. Obviously, there were portions of the season last year where Marty Necas was the leading scorer in the NHL. So don't read too much into anything. But if you were a person that was starting to build a case that Marty Necas can't be the guy, I think you could put together something here, given the playoff series that they had, given this tournament. Again, Marty Necas, great player. I'm not trying to say he's not, but maybe he's a better fit to be the guy playing behind the Nathan McKinnon line. Maybe he should be your second line winger and can help drive some offense with a little bit more of a sheltered role than being the top line guy who you are expecting to produce in all situations at all times. And I'm not saying he can't do that. You put it nicely there. Maybe he has some maturity to get to live up to those moments in his game that isn't quite there just yet for Martin.
Agree. Well said.
All right. We can take our first break here, and then we can talk about some of the playoffs in the NHL. We are brought to you by the folks over at First Bank. Make sure you get in with them. Looking for banking that plays at your pace, whether you're tailgating, grabbing halftime snacks, or catching the game from the couch. First Bank is in your corner. With their secure, easy-to-use mobile banking app, you can check your balance, split the tab for stadium nachos, and stay on top of your money anytime, anywhere. It's like having a financial MVP in your pocket, and here's the play that pays. You can get up to $300 when you open a new First Bank checking account. Use it to score tickets to the Nuggets, Avs, or Rockies, or whatever. Keep your game day going strong. First Bank makes managing your money feel like a win. No games, just solid tools to help you stay in control right from your phone. Ready to take your banking to the next level? Head over to efirstbank.com/bonus. That's efirstbank.com/bonus. Certain restrictions and requirements apply. Member FDIC. Once you're all hooked up with First Bank, maybe you got an extra $300. That is a little bit of beer money. Make sure you jump in and go get yourself some ice cold Coors Light. You can head on over to CoorsLight.com/DNVR to get it delivered right to your front door today. You don't even have to get up off your couch to get Coors Light, thanks to Instacart. And, use the DNVR code to let them know we sent you over there. Coors, the perfect beer for any occasion, whether it's grilling out or you're just hanging out. You go on a long road trip like me and you get to your location rest stop. Yeah, I'm ordering a Coors Light at the bar to cool down after a long day of driving. So jump in with Coors Light. You can also get it for any of your sporting occasions. If you're here in Denver, try checking out the DNVR bar. I don't know. I'll probably be down there hanging out for some of the Cup final games, even if it isn't the Avs playing. So go grab yourself a Coors Light. They're available in pretty much every liquor store in the country. Or, of course, go to CoorsLight.com/DNVR to get it delivered to you today. Of course, Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado. Please drink responsibly. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche Podcast. Do you know what year it is?
Well, 2025, if I remember.
Sure.
I think.
But if you looked at the conference finals, you wouldn't be able to tell whether it was 2025 or 2024. If you looked at the Eastern Conference finals, it could be 2023. Yeah. 3 years running, the Eastern Conference final has had the same two teams. This is the second year in a row the Western Conference final has had the same two teams. And you can even go even deeper into this conversation, as I've had too much time to look at funny statistics about this. Since 2020, a Florida team has been in the Cup finals. So that's 4 or 5 years in a row. And if Florida does it this year, it would be 6. Since 2015, a Florida team has been in the Eastern Conference Finals 8 of 10 times. And one of the 2 times they weren't, Carolina was in it, who has now, including this year, been in 4 conference finals over that stretch. The NHL is projected as this league of parity. And in the regular season, that's certainly true. Now, not the conversation for today's show. We can get into the loser point and all of that and how that creates parity in the NHL. But we've seen the President's Trophy get passed around like a hot pancake. We've seen extremely close regular seasons year after year after year, and yet it always seems to be the same handful of teams making deep runs in the playoffs. Is that a problem for the NHL? Does the NHL have a fake parity issue, or is this just the best teams being the best teams?
Well, I know a lot of people are talking about like Florida, meaning the state tax, and Dallas, the state tax, meaning no state tax, right? If you want to compare it, like Mikko's $12 million. And again, I'm not a math major, but Mikko's $12 million. It's like 13.5, whatever it is, right? I'm not going to get into exact numbers, but they're saying that's an advantage. If you do that to 2-3 players, all of a sudden you're looking at a $4 or $5 million player, right? Fair enough. Maybe. I don't know. I know it bugs a lot of GMs. It does, and some GMs don't care. I just think for me, it just happens to be luck in a sense, meaning like that it's Florida. You know what I mean? I think it's
Yeah,
just the way teams are.
there just happen to be
Yeah,
two teams to Florida.
yeah. I mean, for me, it's how you're built. I was looking at Florida this past weekend again, and they just know how to win, and that's the way they're built. I think Matthew Tkachuk's the one that said it, like before Game 7. I think they were at Game 5 or 6. He's like, we're built for Game 7s, and they're built to go play their game, not worried about what's going to happen. What does the other team do? Is there a bad call? They're built just to go do their job. And when you do your job and you stick to your plan, you're going to win more often than not. I do believe that Dallas is well built. I do believe that Carolina is well built. There is state tax in Carolina. And they're teams that want you to know how to win. I'm convinced of that. And this is where I'm shocked because I've been a little bit of, like this, I had the blinders on a little bit. Like I really didn't realize the Avalanche's lack of success in Game 7s, and I never looked at it because to me I've been blinded by the 2022 win, right? So it's like these guys know how to win. It's championship pedigree. Well, they haven't really won much when you're doing the math compared to those teams that you just talked about. I mean, right? They haven't won much. No, they won. No, I'm talking about they won it all. I'm talking about outside of that year. You're right. If you're doing the math, they won what was the most important, which is the final round. And for me, that's what you get judged on. You know what I mean? And then, but they just, first round, second round, first round. Now you're starting to be like Tampa Bay. You're starting to regress. You're starting to go back the other way, right? Where those guys, for me, Carolina, Dallas, Edmonton, who am I missing here? Florida, obviously. They're teams that I think as a group and as a core, once you learn how to win, once you learn to see what, and you're not stubborn with your game, then more often than not, the way you're built, you can win series. And I think the Avalanche, it comes down to a little bit of stubbornness, you know what I mean? Like, and we talked about it. And I think that's where they've let series slip away a little bit, like this year or even last year. And again, on circumstances that you can't really foresee. You know what I mean? Like last year, the Val Matushkin. And, so they get a bye there. That's why I've been blinded by. I really thought they had more success. You know what I mean? And you're the one that brought it up to me. So.
Well, here's the interesting thing, because the next conversation that I want to get into, and we can bounce back and forth between these two a little bit, but since you brought it up, yeah, you're correct. When you look at a team like a Dallas, they've made significantly more deep runs than the Avs have. When you look at a team like Carolina, they've made significantly more deep runs than the Avs have. Even when you look at a team like Vegas, they have consistently gone deeper in the playoffs than the Avs have. Now, Vegas did manage to win it, so they do at least have that in the cap. But you look at Dallas, Carolina, and Edmonton are really the big three that you can say these guys consistently go deep in the playoffs. And they have a grand total of none in the Stanley Cup total. So how does that, yes, they're good teams. They go deep. They haven't done the thing. What's the separator there? Because you're right. The Avs do feel like they've regressed in some ways. And I do have a counterpoint to that, but we'll get to that in a minute. How come some of these teams that seem to consistently get further into the playoffs than the Avs do can't get over the hump what the Avs did?
Yeah, and it's a banger of a question because of a thought, or what do you want to call it, or statement, or because it is hard to get through. It is hard to get till the end. Carolina's a perfect example for me. They really haven't reached the final, right? We're talking about in the last 5-6 years. I know they won back then. And, I'm not saying that. I'm talking about right now with this coach and this group. But they seem to get out of the first one, second round. Last year they try to get. Everyone was saying they're boring. They can't score. They go get Gensel, right? They go get Gensel, but then he walks for free, and then it didn't work out, and they don't get the ultimate prize. They do it again for a little bit with Mikko there, knowing that they have an escape plan, right? Probably going to flip him. Right, yeah. That rumor was there the day he got traded that he's going to get flipped. Which is fine. But now they go back to that identity, which is right. us against the world. Let's swarm you. Let's put pucks on that. Let's drive Roddy Brendan Moore type hockey, which is awesome. It's working. I'm not bashing Roddy. That's not what I'm saying. But can that give you the ultimate series? Can you get to the ultimate series the way you're built? We'll find out. I mean, we'll find out. It's starting now. You know what I mean? They have a tough sled there against, obviously, the defending champs and a team that knows how to win and a team that was never really healthy all year and is well rested right now, and it's pretty healthy. And you're talking about Brad Marchand, Seth Jones, acquisitions at the deadline that are working. And working really well last game. If you look at Game 7, holy cow. And Marchand, a guy that said here, not here, but in Boston, I'm not going to take a secondary role. I'm a top six guy. Here he is in Florida. He's on a secondary role. He's a middle six guy. He's awesome with, I don't want to butcher his name, but 27, the big Finn, and Lindell, right? And they're the most dominant line, the last few games. Or the series, if you want to talk about with Matthew not being 100%. Matthew Tkachuk, that is. So I think that there is a little bit of we'll wait and see for the Carolinas of the world. Can they get over the hump? Because for me,
they got to win one singular conference finals game before I start to believe
That's my point. Can you just get there, or can you get over the hump? A little bit like the Avs of 2022 when they finally, the Darren Helm goal, they finally get over the second round, and you're like, oh my God, they're going to win the cup. That was my moment. I'm sitting on my patio. For me, that was the moment. Oh my God, they're gonna get it done this year. And so Carolina's a little bit there. I do believe somebody said that this morning. I think I was driving. I was listening. Maybe NHL Network, whatever. But somebody, like a caller, called in and said, if Carolina wins this round, they're winning the cup. You know what I mean? Like, because they're not losing. I can see that. But are they going to really win this round is the big question, right? You know what I mean? So I don't know. And I think Dallas, they went a different route a little bit from last year. Obviously, adding the big fish, which is Mikko, right?
Yeah.
To their roster, to their really already star-studded roster. The emergence of Thomas Harley, like unbelievable as he been. And then the maturity of Ottinger and Net, where you're talking about you're a year later now, a year more of playoff experience from last year and failure at some point, whenever they lost to Edmonton. So now I think Dallas is a dangerous team. And then it's the same thing with Edmonton because you're built a little bit like the Avalanche in the sense that you get two of the best players in the world. And can you get over the hump with that, with subpar goaltending? That's always going to be there. People are always going to ask about it. I know McDavid gets mad and tired of being asked about, but it's a fact. You know what I mean? It's polarizing goaltending. You know what I mean? Like, Skinner. And I feel bad because he seems like a great dude. You know what I mean? Like, and our good old friend Calvin. You know what I mean? So I think you're taking those teams and you're like, and again, Florida's just been there 2 years in a row. They know how to win. They're built for this. The acquisitions that they did are just awesome and they're working. Again, if they don't work, they lose in the first round. You got to remember, Florida's down 2-0 in the series going to overtime in Toronto. They're one goal away from being kaput, right? Then they fall down 3-0. It's over. You're going to say, well, maybe not against the Leafs. I know, I get it. Whatever. Maybe. Who knows? We'll never know. But, you got to remember, then all of a sudden those moves were, first round pick for Marchand and second round. I mean, those are heavy prices, as we saw with the Avalanche. And then when it works, though, they're awesome. And when it doesn't work, those were tough. You know what I mean? And so that's why we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of angles to it. I don't know how to really judge the resiliency of these two teams. Like, obviously, the Avs haven't won a Game 7, and that is a big problem for them. You very legitimately can look at that and have problems with that. But also, the Nuggets have won Game 7s. They also got absolutely nuked, blown out in their last Game 7. Like, game was not remotely close. So, resiliency is a complicated conversation. The Avs were extremely resilient for 47 minutes of Game 7 and then completely got lit on fire for the last 13 and lost. So obviously the Avs need to do a better job of winning in those clutch situations. With this core, they haven't done a good job of it. There's no two ways around that. No one can make the argument that the Avs have been good enough in those do or die situations. I do think there is some reason for optimism, though, and I will get into that in just a minute, but we do have to pay a couple more bills here before we do that. So let's start by paying a few bills. Go from there. Because if you want to be resilient in do or die situations, you got to build a good foundation. And to build a good foundation to the house you're living in, well, you need a foundation, obviously. But on top of that, flooring. That's where Empire Today comes in. Make sure you're jumping in with them. Just like your favorite team needs a home court, field, or ice advantage, your home needs a floor advantage. Empire Today can get you $350 off new floors when you go to empiretoday.com/DNVR today. They have the flooring experts dedicated to flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. They only carry the best products. You don't end up with junk. It's only the good stuff that you can look through, figure out what you want, whether that's in store, whether that's online, or whether that's in home. They give you a free in-home estimate. When you get a hold of them today, they'll come out, they'll show you your stuff in your space. You can match it with your furniture and your walls and whatever else you're looking for. So get with Empire today. Schedule that free in-home estimate today because some things are just better at home. DNVR listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code DNVR. Yep, that's right. A $350 discount with that DNVR code. Of course, restrictions apply. Visit empiretoday.com/DNVR for full details, or call 1-800-588-2300. Empire. And then make sure you're also taking care of yourself. Look, it's the off season. I said about Bedard, sometimes to be healthy, you just got to stay home. All right. You can also go out. That might be what's healthy for you. UC Health has you covered. Thursday, June 5th, is the 7th annual UC Health Healthy Swings Charity Home Run Derby. Broncos players like Cortland Sutton, Alex Singleton, Marvin Mims, and more will be stepping up to the plate at Coors Field to raise money. UC Health has donated over $900,000 to local charities over 6 iterations, supporting Coloradans with food insecurity, cancer screenings, and veterans' mental health challenges. This year's beneficiary is Freedom Service Dogs, so do it for the dogs. Freedom Service Dogs provide service dogs to individuals with limited mobility, young adults with autism, veterans, and first responders to help with disabilities like PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, and more. So get with the guys over at UC Health. Make sure you're living like there is a tomorrow and come out and help support a good cause with the Healthy Swings Charity Blast. Jump in, UC Health. Again, uchealth.org to learn to live like there is a tomorrow. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. Here's the one thing that I want to mention, and it's not an excuse for the Avs. You talk about this all the time. If you want to win the cup, you got to go through 4 rounds. You got to go through everybody. So from that regard, it doesn't really matter. But here's why maybe I care a little bit less about, these teams have gone on deep runs and the Avs only did the one thing. All right. If it was 1 through 8 seeding, I might give that a little bit more credibility than what we have. And someone in chat, this comment came up earlier. I didn't see who it was, but they made this point of like the seeding system has not helped the Avs. You looked at this year's first round series with Dallas, and I think everyone agreed. Yeah, the winner of this series is going to the conference finals. And wouldn't you know it, that's exactly what happened. So yes, is it a first round exit for the Avs? Absolutely. But is it a first round exit that really should have been a conference final loss? Like,
yeah, I mean, I always say it, right? Playoffs is be playing the best hockey that you are of the season. 2, avoid injuries. 3, luck of the draw. I mean, I don't care what people say. The draw is important. Unfortunately, the Avalanche play in the Central Division, which is the best division in hockey. And whoever tells you it's not, then they can call us and we'll have a conversation and we'll let them know that no, this is big boy hockey. You know what I mean? Central Division, there's no easy nights. You know what I mean? I don't want to hear about. I know there's the Blackhawks and stuff like that, but at the end of the day, they gave the Avalanche some fits this year. But you know what I mean? It's a tough situation that night in, night out you play, and your draw was a tough one, and it could have been disastrous for the Dallas Stars as well. You know what I mean? And they were, like you said, 10 minutes away from disaster where it's a failure because you make the big trade for Anton and then next thing you know you're out in the first round and where is this going? You know what I mean? Where is it? But instead the big boys showed up and made the big plays, and I'm talking about Migo, and next thing you know they're the ones that go through and they're the ones that hand the Avalanche their papers, right? And to say, well, first round exit, and it stinks and it stings and For a guy like management, that's tough because they laid it all out on the table. For coaches, it's hard because you prepared your team as much as you can. And for players, it hurts because you felt that you played decent hockey where you were able to get through. But Dallas just made the plays at the right time when the Avalanche didn't, and that's the difference in a nutshell. And then you got one, like you said, team definitely going to the conference finals, which they are, which we knew. And I'm going to stick to mine. I do believe it's whoever won that first round series is going to win the Stanley Cup. And it's a lot like Avs in Detroit back then in the late 90s and 2000s. I always said whoever wins that one's going to win it all. And more often than none, that's what happened. So I do believe that the Avalanche, unfortunately, in the gauntlet of the Central Division, which leads to your draw of the playoffs. And for some reason, it stunk a little bit. Yeah, and even last year, I mean, again, Winnipeg Jets is not an easy feast last year. I know the Avalanche made it look good, and then Hellebuck struggled, but it's not an easy first round opponent. You know what I mean? Like for a team that had a lot of success last year, like the Jets. I'm talking about not this past season, the season before.
All I'm saying is, when you compare that to the Seattle year, okay, fine. The Avs lost to a team that they probably shouldn't have lost to. Yeah, there's some context there with the Avs having an unbelievably injured year and Nichushkin the first time around. And sure,
yeah,
I think in hindsight you can still look at that Seattle loss and go, that's probably the weakest team that the Avs lost to so far in this era in the playoffs. But when you look at their other losses, okay, they lost to Dallas in the bubble. Well, Dallas went to the Cup final there. They lost it, but you lost to one of the two top teams in the league ultimately that year. And you look at they consistently are playing Dallas. That's the team that's eliminating them. And yes, they need to find a way to beat Dallas. Yes, I'm not taking away all the negatives that are here for the Avs. But when you take that and you compare it to a team like Edmonton, who gets to play LA in the first round every year, a team that they just have their number. They just beat that team. It just is the same way Dallas is with Colorado. Dallas just beats this team. You start to wonder about the validity. And I mean, it's valid, right? The teams that move on. They won their series, and fair enough. But Edmonton, I think, is the prime example. It was like, okay, cool. So you beat LA, and then what? They beat the Flames in 5, only to get trounced by the Avs in the Avs Cup here. They followed that up by what? I guess they lost in the second round to Vegas after that. Yeah. And then they go to the Cup final last year by doing what? They beat the Kings. They beat the Canucks, who missed the playoffs this year, by the way. So, cool. And then they beat the Stars last year. Fair enough. There are some good wins in there. But I do wonder how much credit we're giving teams just because their paths are maybe more suited to them than some of the paths that the Avs have gone through. And the counterpoint of that is, hey, did the Avs have a relatively easy path in 22? Yes, absolutely. And they took advantage of it. They did the thing and they won.
Yeah. And what I'll add to that, and that's why I keep saying luck of the draw is big. And we tend to forget because I say the opposite as well on the same sentence was, oh, you have to go through all the good teams. You know what I mean? That's your mindset when you get a bad draw, right? Oh, well, you have to go through them all anyway. You know what I mean? And that's, you know what I mean? That's like your positive outlook on the bad draw. Sylvain, there, a French guy in the chat, is talking about it. And he's saying exactly what I said. He's just saying, yeah, but the first generation 1.0, they always kind of made it to at least the conference finals. And he's right. And that's why I was saying the other day, I think you were not on the show, I'm like, my only disappointment is like, it's so early. You know what I mean? And again, they're just different circumstances with the Val, situation, with the injury situation against, again, Val as well, against Seattle. I feel like there's been a little bit of lack of success, you know what I mean, since the Cup year. You know what I mean? And it's like, it's 3 years in a row where I feel it's disappointments. And that's what Sly was saying. He's saying at least they were getting to the conference final. You know what I mean? And I agree. It stings to lose anyway, but there's a little bit of a silver lining, at least when you get to the Final Four, because there's 28 other teams that are not there. So you can just kind of find a silver lining that, yeah, cup or bust, but at least we were just one little thing away because of this, and that. You know what I mean? So I just feel that the Avalanche, it's like, oh, there's been a little bit of lack, and I think it's part of it is the draw. Again, this year, that's just a bad luck draw. And again, part of circumstances that you can't really control. And again, I'm not going back to Val, but I'm using that as an example. So I think there's been built-in excuses for something for the failures, where now all of a sudden, like next year, and it's a year away, it's like there's no excuses. You know what I mean? It's like there's no more excuses, right? It's like you gotta get it done when you have two of the best, and a little bit like Edmonton's been doing, but they just have not closed the last series where the Avalanche did. You know what I mean? So that's kind of, you know what I mean?
100%.
That's the difference.
The lack of closing, valid. It's the Avs' problem. All I'm saying is, and I'll use the Avs 1.0 to reiterate, and I know we're talking in circles a little bit, so I'll just say this and then we'll move on. The Avs 1.0 made it to a bunch of conference finals. Obviously, they won 2 of them and went on to win their cups. The other 4 they lost. Twice to Detroit, twice to Dallas.
Yep.
Now, imagine, because back then, Dallas was not in the same division as the Avs.
No.
So what if Dallas was back then? That's the difference. If Dallas is playing the Avs in round 1 and 2 in Avs 1.0, then they lose in the second round instead of the conference finals.
That's right. You're right. That's a great point. That's a fair point. No, that's a fair point. Yep.
The point I'm making is not that the Avs are good enough. Not that I'm not trying to defend the Avs here. The point that I'm making is I don't really see the value in differentiating between a first or second round loss and a conference finals loss. At the end of the day, you didn't win the cup either way.
That's fair. That's a fair point that I never looked at, and that's a very smart way to look at it. I like it. I'm not arguing it.
We can move on. I think we don't need to get much more in the weeds on that, because again, at the end of the day, the Avs have to look internally and find a way to improve, because the Leafs just lost, right? The entire conversation around the Leafs is it's the end of the core 4 era for them, and they never won a game 7 together. I don't really think it's the same with the Avs, but obviously there's some similarities there with Rantanen moving on this year, with the Avs trading him. That core has altered for Colorado now, and you're moving forward into, I wouldn't call it a new era. This has ultimately always been the McKinnon-Makar era and will continue to be so. But you're adjusting now. You live in a world where Marty Necas is now your best winger. Probably. Not for today's show to argue whether it's Necas or Nichushkin or Landeskog or whatever. You live in a world where Landeskog is healthy also. There are positives to this conversation. And Colorado has to figure out how to exist like this, because they're still well within their cup window. Cale Makar is just reaching his prime. Nathan McKinnon, assuming he can stay healthy, has at least a few more years of peak or very close to peak play. If you watch those guys play, you should believe that they have a chance. But how they build around them and what they do next is very important. You've had this 3 or 4 year window where you just had all of these guys and you knew the payment time was coming up. Well, the payment time, they made their decision with Mikko, and then next year the payment time for Cale is it's time. The money's coming. And you can still build championships like that. Teams do. Florida or Tampa Bay really is the one that did it. They lost their cup finals in 2015, and it took them 5 years to go win, and then they won 2 in a row. Colorado has to prove that they can adjust, though. And this comes to the front office, so I'm sure you can speak on this.
Yeah.
It's a different world now. The Avs spent a bunch of assets to come up short. How does their mindset adjust this offseason? What changes for them besides, it's hard. Trust me, I get it. You can look at the picture and know that they have work to do and not a lot of resources. But how do you focus in as an organization to fix that?
And I'm going to throw one at you just to see, because they're going to look at it. And hear me out. I'm not saying they're doing it, and I'm not saying I would do it. You know my answer on the player, but you know, we just saw Toronto get done, right? We
I knew this was
also
coming.
we also saw Toronto lose in a way that everyone is just absolutely on top of the core guys saying they didn't get it done, which hard to argue against, right? Not necessarily targeting one guy, but them as a group, right? Which is the fair way to do it. But there seems to be a pattern there, and it just seems to be the same pattern year in and year out. Now you have a guy, and I'm going to use him, Marner. That's who I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
Good player, 100-point guy, really good player. If you think he's a bad player, then man, you should keep watching hockey because he's a good player. You don't get 100-point in this league and when you're a bad player. He's a smart player, plays on the PK, plays on the PP. Look at the Four Nations. A guy like Cooper really was like, what are these people talking about? This is a gamer. He's a gamer. You know what I mean? And then rubs elbows with Crosby's a little bit. He kind of hangs out with a little bit with the Vail group last summer, right? And McKinnon and those guys. Now, is this a guy the Avs are going to look at? You know what I mean? Because we all know they don't have draft capital. They were willing to pay Mikko. Let's just use a number to use a number. Use the $12 million, okay? Just make it. Well, that's what he signed for in Dallas, and we all know that that's what the Avalanche, give and take, offered, right? Is it a little bit more, a little bit less? Once you get into those numbers, I'm not minimizing the 0.2 or the 0.5 or whatever because that's a boatload of money. That's not what I'm saying. But give and take, for argument's sake, make it a 12. Okay. You know the Avalanche. I can tell you Joe Sakic likes Mitch Marner. I can tell you that because I know Joe. I know what he thinks, and I know how he plays the game, and I know how he played the game. I know what he thinks of the game. This is a guy that knows how to play hockey. Mitch Marner. Are they looking at a guy like this? Because for me, I'm convinced 100% Mitch Marner. Again, I don't know him. I'm convinced he's going out west. I don't think he's made for that in the East. I don't think he's made for that pressure cooker. Is that part of it? Why he didn't get it done all those years? Maybe. You'll never know because he never did it. So you'll never know. I think he's going out west. A team like, I'm going to give you two teams, Utah, Seattle. They're going to throw him a boatload of money. Okay. But if you're the Avalanche, you know what I mean? And let's say the number was 12 or, you know what I mean? And they were saying, well, at 14, again, I'm assuming those numbers. It doesn't work because we can't get the Jack Juries of the world and, our depth. But they were willing to give a guy 11 and a half, 12. Is Marner really going to get a lot more than that? I mean, they're saying he might. But then with his lack of playoff success here, and again, he did get some points. He's still in top 5 in scoring, right, in the league. And it's just that in the crucial games, in the big games, he just hasn't been there. I can't argue against that. I don't think he'll ever do it in a Toronto uniform. That's why I say he's moving on. Now he's going to walk for nothing. It is what it is. And that could have been Mikko, right? You know what I mean? That could have been whatever it is. So now for Toronto, that's a big loss. Do they turn around and, sign Marchand? People were saying Marchand and Bennett and, all that kind of stuff in Toronto. I don't know. That's not for me to analyze. We're an Avalanche podcast. But I do believe if you're the Avalanche, they're going to look at Mitch Marner. They're going to look and see if they can make it work. Now, your argument, and it's a great argument, you're going to say, well, is that what the Avalanche need, right? You know what I mean? Like, is it what they need? You know what I mean? And that's for us to figure out if they ever announce that Mitch Marner has signed to be an Avalanche, then we can, say it afterwards. And, oh, no, that's not what they need, But I think it's a fair assessment that that's one way to see how can you improve your team next year because they were willing to give it to Mikko. Right? You know what I mean? Now you're going to say, yeah, but Brock Nelson. No, I know. That allowed you to go get, Brock Nelson. But again, is Brock Nelson out of reach now, for next year? Maybe. Of course, if you sign a guy like Marner, of course that's out of reach. But I'm saying maybe you can use that money and then figure out your roster. I don't know. That's not what I would do. But I'm just throwing it out there that they're going to look at it. And again, a lot of teams are going to look at it. This is a 100-point guy in the NHL.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, it comes down to that number, right? Like,
Yeah.
absolutely. If you are an NHL team with enough money, regardless of what happens this offseason, the Avs should go to Mitch Marner on July 1st or, really June 25th, but nobody talks about it because you're not allowed to do that.
Next week.
You say, here's $12 million for 7 years, Mitch. It's on the table.
Yeah.
If you want it at that price, he's absolutely worth it. He's 28. That contract would take him to 35. You get every good year left of him, and with any luck, almost all of those years would be good years at a decent price for market value. Now, realistically, I think Marner probably wants more than 12 million. Does Marner get more than 12 million? A different conversation. Mikko learned that the hard way. So if it's out there, if that's what it comes down to, and he's willing to take that to come to Colorado, you do it. Because does Mitch Marner make your team better? Obviously he makes you better. And is it the perfect piece for the Avs? Maybe not, but you figure that out. You don't pass up a player of that caliber if it's on the table. And maybe, I don't know. Obviously people are going to feel how they feel about the Mikko situation. And right now the Avs look like they're on the wrong side of that. So if Marner for 12 million can put some other team on the wrong side of that, great. Realistically, I don't think that's going to happen, but the offer should be there if you're Colorado, and they have the money technically.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Or even a guy like, and again, I don't know the situation. I don't know the guy. I'm going to throw something very out in left field there, like left field. Is Marner a guy? You're going to say, no, I mean, the risk of injury and insurance. Hey, listen, nowadays there's a lot you can do with insurance and everything, but does he sign a 1-year deal? Like, why not? So go sign a 1-year deal to a team like the Avs and go win, and then all of a sudden you get your payday wherever you want. I don't know. Again, I'm throwing this out. Like, why would you want to play with Makar and McKinnon? You know what I mean? The Solani and Korea did it back then. It didn't work out. They went back to their payday after. They've had their payday before, just like Marner. Does he come in and say, you know what? Just going to go for that 1-year deal and then just get myself in a situation again to win and go from there? Because I think he signs in Seattle for a lot of money. Do I think he wins in Seattle? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe they'll never win. He's certainly not going to win next year. And again, I'm willing to bet that. You know what I mean? Like that Seattle's not winning next year, even with Marner. So does he? And again, that's something you look at. I mean, are you serious? Like, why not? You look for a 1-year deal and go from there. And then you show people wrong that you can produce in the playoffs and you're not the guy. Because in Colorado, always going to be the guy. It's going to be McKinnon. It's going to be Makar. That's just the way it is. Like we said earlier, right? You're going to play secondary fiddle. And maybe that suits guys like him. I don't know. Maybe. And that's where it should suit a guy like Marty. You know what I mean? That's why I say it should suit a guy like Marty, to be the secondary guy.
And a couple other conversations here. Sure. Is there some struggles in big games from Marner? Sure. Fine. Mm-hmm. When you look at his playoffs, there's some pretty good numbers there. 63 points in 70 career playoff games. And the majority of that came in the last 4 years. This year, 13 points in 13 playoff games.
Yeah.
It's not like the guy ghosted. 23-24, yeah, he struggled. 3 points in 7 games, that's not great. The year before that, 14 points in 11 playoff games. Pretty solid. Year before that, 8 points in 7 playoff games. Marner is not ghosting the playoffs by any stretch. And obviously Mikko's having an unbelievable playoffs and he's always been a great playoff performer. Again, the Avs moved on from that. Fine. But you have to, at a certain point, look at different moves in their own boxes. The Mikko move is done. It's over. What it is what it is. Now you're looking at what's available to you now. With the Marner situation, and someone brought it up in chat, it's a valid point. Hey, they just moved out Mikko because they felt like they need more depth. Wouldn't handcuffing themselves with Marner kind of renege on that? And to some extent, yeah, It does. Like that's definitely a fair angle to look at. And you could say, hey, we need this money to fill out our depth. And if that's the way you want to go with it, fair enough. Like there's a very real argument that that's the right move. But again, for contract value, if Marner is available for $12 million and he's going to give you a roughly 100-point player if healthy, when you look at value there, you're picking up a free agent. So it costs you no players directly. The Avs would probably have to move some pieces out to make the cap work. But if Marner's giving you 100 points, and again, I'm not saying the Avs are going to move these players, but if you just look up a couple of Avs depth guys that you feel like you have to move out, how many points did Ross Colton have for the Avs this year? And I know he was injured for a bunch of it, but you can take the 82-game pace he was on. How many points did he have? It's not even close to 100.
No. What was he on pace for? Just so.
Hang on. Let me do the actual math. Let me bust out the calculator here because I can't do that on the fly. He had
30.
20. He had 29 points in 61 games. So in an 82-game pace, that would be just shy of 40. So if you have to move out Ross Colton as one of the pieces for Mitch Marner, you're netting around 60 points. And I get conversations are more complicated than that. There's a defensive factor. There are other things there. But sometimes the math adds up that you need the points. And if you traded 3 depth guys off the Avs, Mitch Marner's probably giving you more points than those guys. Just saying.
They're going to look at it. I'm telling you, they're going to look at it. I'm not saying I would do it, and I'm not saying I would do it because he's not my favorite. I'm just being honest with Chad here.
At
he's
12
not
million,
my favorite.
I would do it.
So
I would absolutely do it at 12 million. If he wants to 15, different conversation.
But you're talking about Makar, McKinnon. You know, if you're a player, you want to play with guys like that. He's playing with Austin. Austin's a good player, Matthews. I mean, we can, he's got his warts and he's got his faults, and but he scored 70, right, 69 2 years ago. Like, so this he's used to playing with good and elite players, and does he go to Pittsburgh? But this is probably Sid's. Like, I know we keep saying Sid's on the decline but he sure looks like a freaking 22-year-old. But whatever. Does he go there with Dubas and can they fit him? I don't even know. I don't have anything in front of me for that kind of money I'm talking about. But he's gonna be offered. I just said it. Chicago, Seattle, Utah. They're gonna offer him $14 million, $13 million. But it's not where you want to go. I think he wants out of Toronto. So obviously, I think Steve's talking about. I think he's out. I think he's definitely out. I think he's coming out west. Is he my favorite player? He's not. I'm just being honest. Now, but you got to think differently than he's not my favorite. You got to think the Avalanche to get better, to get back to where they're going to be at 2C, where they're going to be. Is that an option? Again, remember, I'm talking about Lieutenant Brock Nelson. Is that an option? You know what I mean? Like, or if not, then is it go down? Like, how do you build your roster? You know what I mean? So I think they're going to look at everything, and they're going to look at it because I know they value him for sure. Just like a lot of teams do.
The Avs are currently set up with less than 9 million. They have about 8-ish million in space right now, today, to do whatever they're going to do in the offseason. Let's say you give Mitch Marner $12 million and he comes. So you're at negative $4 million. You move Ross Colton, you're back to the cap, plus a little. Then you move on from Miles Wood, that's another $2.5 million. Then you move on from Josh Manson, that's $4.5 million. Now you're up to $7 million in space. Yes. Have you made holes in your lineup? Absolutely. Do you have to fill those holes? Yes. And you have that $7 million to do it. So you have to make decisions.
I know.
Mitch Marner makes you better, but maybe you're living with Charlie Coyle as your 2C, at least to start the year. And you're filling out your roster with depth options. Maybe you're bringing back a Ryan Lindgren on a cheaper deal to be your number 4D instead of Josh Manson. This is the world of salary cap hockey, is that to make moves, you have to sacrifice in other places, and you have to find a way to be better. I don't envy the guy who has to make those decisions in Chris McFarland because it's a really, really hard job. And very quickly, we are going into overtime. So just a heads up, if you're watching on TV, jump over and join us online at DNVR.com where the conversation continues. Alrighty, go ahead.
What I was saying is it's funny because every summer it's got its challenges for the front office. Last year was the summer, and that's why we started the first show of the off season was the uncertainty of Gabe Landeskog and his injury, and the uncertainty of the suspension to Val, right? So it's kind of funny. Not funny. It's like that for every team, but all of a sudden it's a totally different dynamics this summer. Now it's like, how do I fix that when I really don't have any capital? I don't have draft capital. I don't have prospects I don't have. What do I do? How do I get better? And I might have guys, Lieutenant Brock Nelson, walk. I might have what do I do? And those are fun. That's why I'm saying those challenges are fun because it's fun. It's exciting. It's a new construction. Think of it as Legos and stuff like that, right? I'm being stupid, but that's what it is. And it's a new thing you're trying to build. But ultimately you're trying to get to the top, which is a Stanley Cup, right? So it's you might have a different look, you might have a different pattern, but at the end of the day, it's still the same goal. And you have to look at every avenue. You have to. And it's not because I don't like Mitch Marner that they're not going to look at it. You know what I mean? So I do believe they look at it, and I do believe they have a big shot at landing him, actually, if they want to land him.
Yep.
That I'm convinced of. So
I'm looking up an interesting statistic here to wrap up today's show, but give me a second here just to let me confirm it. While I'm still looking it up. I know in the modern era, there's been a lot of these teams that have gone back to back or won a number of cups in quick succession, but there are a handful of teams that, and this used to be a bit more regular. You win one, and then maybe 5-6 years later, you win another one. You find a way to win that extra one. Detroit in 2008, New Jersey won a couple, a little bit spaced out in the 2000s. How reasonable is it to still do that in the modern era, I guess is the question I'm asking.
How tough is it to do it in the modern? It is tough, right? To repeat, you're saying?
Yeah. I always use Tampa, who lost in 2015 before winning in 2020. But
I just feel that the way you're building teams now is, and I said it first 5 minutes of the show, I do believe that once you realize you know how to win, and you know how to close out series, I feel that you have a chance to keep going. You know what I mean? Look at Florida. They win 3 rounds, then they lose, the fourth round. And then they win 4 rounds, so you're 7-1, and now you're 9-1, right? In the last 10 playoff series. And some of them have gone 7 games. Some of them have been played in the dirt. Some of them they've been hurt. Some of them, so they know how to do it. At the end of the day, they'll figure out a way. So I do believe in this era, once you have your core, you keep your core, and the secondary guys will come and go, as we know. Florida's no different. They've lost a lot of guys over the years, right? And they might lose Bennett now this year, right? Who knows? So, that's another guy to keep an eye out. Everyone's going to be after him, but you're going to have to overpay him? Yeah, probably for what he gives you, because at the end of the day, he's a 50-point guy, right, Sammy? He's not a... But those are that's my style. That's what I like. Again, you know what I mean? I would take my money and spend it on that. That's what I would do. But again, it's got to be a marriage, right? He's got to want to come here too and all that kind of stuff. So, but I think for this era to repeat and everything, I think you have to have your core, and then you have to make sure you make the deals. And again, Chris made the deals, and it didn't work out because they didn't win. So those are technically bad deals because it leaves you with nothing. And I'm not saying I wouldn't have done it. I would have 100% done what he did. Now, what's his name? Bill Zito. He does those deals, pays the price to get Marchand and Jones, and they deliver. And now he looks like a genius, right? You know what I mean? So, that's how you win for me, and that's how you win multiple ones, and that's how you keep going there every year once you have a good core that you decide to stick with.
I'll leave you with this. Avs top 5 scorers in the regular season of their 96 Cup win. Joe Sakic, Peter Forsberg. Then it was Kaminsky, Lemieux, and Scott Young. Avs top 5 scoring forwards in their 0-1 Cup. Zakic and Forsberg. Then it was Hayduk, Tanguay, and Drury.
That's right.
Avs Cup win, top 5 scorers. You have McKinnon and Makar in there. Of course, Rantanen technically led the team in the regular season because McKinnon didn't play a bunch of games. But Rantanen, McKinnon, Kadri, Makar, Burakovsky. The Avs still have McKinnon and Makar.
That's it. That's what I'm saying. And
I know.
Those secondary guys will go. You're right. You know what I mean? That's just how it works. That's how it works, man. That'll be fun. That'll be fun to watch.
All I'm saying is don't sell the Avs core down the river just yet.
No. No way.
I'm gonna leave it there. We'll have more to talk about tomorrow. Maybe we'll investigate the cap situation more and what silliness the Avs could get into potentially.
Sure.
But, we are out of here for today. Appreciate all y'all. Yeah, it's been a minute since I've been on, so glad to be back.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be back on for a while. Hope y'all are doing well. That's it though. This has been the DNVR Avalanche Podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.
We all silly like the mayor.